Hi, my name is Sourabh. This topic again is Gen AI, but this is related to SAP. So, how many in the room have heard about SAP? I know everybody is hearing Gen AI, but how many of here? Oh, okay. So at least some people are from my background. That's good. I think we'll start with my introduction. I'm Sourabh Charadia. I'm an AWS ambassador and I'm a SAP on AWS expert. So I come from Wipro. And what I have been working on is basically migrating customers, deploying customers on AWS as well as other clouds for that matter. And as part of that journey, I have got some learnings. That's what I'm going to discuss about. And how do we actually use Gen AI in this space, right? Because while on one side we discuss SAP as a repository of data, right? And Gen AI being something that can harness that data. There is always a gap between these two, right? SAP is still treated as something outside of the Gen AI world. Okay, so there is still a maturity, I would say, which has to come, and that's what we are going to discuss. So we'll start with what is SAP, right? What is SAP on AWS? SAP is a well-known ERP software. I think has been running for more than 40 years now. For people who don't know, more than 90% of the Fortune 500 companies run SAP. More than 90% of the transactions which we do day in and day out somehow touches SAP, right? If you are buying something in Reliance Smart Bazaar or Bike Basket, behind that, the whole inventory management and the whole of other stuffs, right? Procurement, all those things actually happen in some way or the other on SAP. Okay, and now more and more customers are trying to deploy SAP on AWS and other clouds, right? But one of the things that is basically a challenge is that SAP can still be deployed more in an infrastructure as a service form, right? While all the other apps that you have been hearing, like Elasticsearch in previous session or in morning sessions, they are basically a more SaaS kind of availability is already available, right? So, but with SAP, that's the problem, that there is still a maturity that has to come on how do we deploy it in a PaaS form or a SaaS form. But as such, the important point is the fourth point, right? With GenAI, you can tap the data that is there in SAP. Every single customer that is running on SAP will have terabytes of data, which can actually be used to create wonderful internal Gen AI applications or AI applications for that matter. But the problem is customers don't know how to do this, right? And there is a security problem, which I think we heard in previous sessions as well. So these two problems we need to see how we can address, and that's what I'm going to show in a couple of slides. But trust me, and my personal experience with enterprise customers, it's hard to convince. I was speaking to a couple of guys outside as well. While it is easy to put it on a slide, it is very hard to implement a Gen AI use case for an enterprise SAP customer to solve their problem because of the data security issues, right? We heard about security so much, and this is the core problem basically. Yeah. So I think not sure if some of you have heard about something called Joule. Are you familiar with this? Joule? Okay. It was announced in SAP TechEd November last year. It's basically SAP's own compared with Amazon Q, right? So it's SAP Joule, which is an inbuilt Gen AI application which will be available on all the SAP's SaaS services, right? Where SAP is actually delivering in a SaaS model, it's actually readily available. So yeah, I mean, customers have to basically see how they can use it. Again, as I said, the problem is how much of the internal data can be used with Joule is again a challenge. Yeah. I'll not talk about this too much. I think most of us know this, and we have been hearing about this since morning. So there are all the Gen AI features available right from Party Rock, Code Whisperer, Amazon Q. So they cater to all the roles, right? They cater right from the business user who actually uses SAP in, let's say, a store, or as a finance guy who actually runs reports, to the administrator who basically manages these SAP systems, and to the developer who actually develops on top of this, right? Just a side note is that we will come to Code Whisperer. It is not readily still available for SAP ABAP programming language, but I am sure that will come in near future. And actually, we can still use Party Rock for that matter. I have a couple of demos to show that. But that's basically the GenAI offerings. I'm not going into details of GenAI offerings because I believe most of you are aware of these. Okay. How many of you have heard about AWS SDK for SAP ABAP? Is this something that you know? No. Okay. So SAP ABAP is a programming language. I'll take a step back because I know folks are not from SAP background. Okay. So SAP ABAP, or it's basically the programming language developed by SAP based on C and C++ framework, which is actually the heart of SAP's innovation, right? So what SAP has been doing for 30, 40 years is actually based on this ABAP programming language. It models the whole customers' business processes in a business form, right? So while the normal programming languages try to address smaller use cases, they actually see the whole business process, whether it be procurement, whether it be sales and distribution. The whole processes can be modeled using the ABAP framework. So, I mean, if you go to SAP ABAP, just Google it, right? You will find hundreds of programs, and this has been the reason that SAP has been so widely adopted by enterprise customers. AWS SDK, Software Development Kit, is developed by AWS on top of this ABAP, which can put in SAP system to connect, right? To connect basically the ABAP to the AWS native services. So you see, right, on the left side, you have SAP standard modules, which are basically the standard order management, sales and distribution, all of those stuffs. You can have custom programs. But the problem that most of the customers face now is, right, how do I connect this repository of data, which is there in SAP, which can do all of these business processes, to the new innovations, the 200 plus AWS services, which are actually available, readily available, but there is no connection. So until the SDK came out, it was all custom developments that were performed by various developers, and it was so hard to implement. With this, it's basically a simple, you see the REST API call. So it's a simple REST API call. Well, I use the word simple, but it is only simple for a developer. There are security concerns around it and all of those stuffs which we'll discuss. But from a purely developer point of view, what it does is you can simply make a call from your ABAP program that you're writing and tell it that, okay, my file will be sitting in S3 bucket. So whenever the file is there, you can just read it, right? So you don't need to really write the code in detail. In fact, I'll come to a Party Rock demo at the end, which actually allows you to even write the code itself, right? So that's SDK. Basically, out-of-the-box integrations are available. Out-of-the-box integrations can be up to SageMaker and all of those innovative services. So it can be to Bedrock. Almost every AWS service you can directly call from the SDK itself. So that's a wonderful thing that SAP and AWS have together brought out. Yeah. So coming to the next slide, and this is where I wanted to discuss in detail about how do we sort of amalgamate or combine the SAP's data power with the AWS machine learning power, right? So if you see this on the left side, you basically, I don't know, is the image clear? Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'll try to cover it as much as possible and try to discuss in detail what we are trying to do. So it all starts with the SAP business applications. You see, right, the SAP logo. You will have SAP data in some form or the other. In this case, you have the housing modeling data for this customer in couple of tables. The first step is, as in any ML process, right? You need to do data preparation and feature engineering. So for that, what we do is we use Amazon AppFlow. Amazon AppFlow. Not sure if people are aware of AppFlow. Are you familiar with it? No? Okay. So Amazon AppFlow is actually for these kind of use cases where you have SAP or Oracle Financials or let's say Microsoft Dynamics kind of data repositories, if I use that word, right? And you want to basically design an extraction process. And that is where you can have app flow. It can schedule those data extractions and have those connectors available which can pull in the data. Yeah, and then from that Amazon app flow, you see on the top what we are trying to do is we are trying to do a data transformation, right? We are basically trying to analyze this housing modeling data to see how the pricing has been for the different areas. I think most of you would have used as a learning this California's housing data. So that's the same kind of setup, but think of it not from that data set itself, but from a customer data set. You can think of it, let's say something like a big basket, right? So big basket have hundreds of or thousands of sales orders being processed, and let's say they want to analyze in which area of Mumbai is the milk being more prominent order every minute or every hour. And in which area is this more for the biscuits kind of product. So that kind of analysis is where the power of combination of SAP and the SageMaker comes in, right? So while the image shows housing modeling data, I also try to visualize it in that form. And what have been done on the top side is basically we have created that model. So you see the test and train data basically has been created. And then on the bottom is where you have the Amazon app flow trying to have this sent to the S3 trigger, right? So what we are trying to do here is whatever learnings from the data set that we have got, right? How do I use this for the next day's order, right? Because this is where the combination of these machine learning models comes with SAP. Because now, I think in morning also you would have heard, right? AWS has helped some of these big basket kind of companies to reduce their inventory wastage by 30%, right? But how does that happen behind the scenes, right? Because one part of this data is always going to sit in some of these ERP softwares, the beast like SAP, while other part of it is the magic of machine learning happens in the AWS space. So this is the diagram is trying to depict that, and you see that whenever the visualization is required, we are doing it on quick side. Now, that is the whole visualization. I'll tell you a couple of main challenges that we face around when we try to do this, right? Because when we work for enterprise customers, see, one of the first thing that they would challenge us on is that I have a business application data, but I don't want to expose that data onto S3, right? Because if I expose this data to S3, then there is a security risk, right? While we say all the S3 policies and all we can protect, still customers are not really comfortable, right? And especially SAP being the finance information and things like what can basically leak their business secrets. So for that matter, what we see is that some of these processing only can be performed outside in SageMaker kind of engines, but customer might ask us to say that you don't store the data in S3, and that's where you will see that there are some data extraction references. I have put a link. There are other data extraction reference models, and one of them actually tries to address this specific problem. So always when you're talking about SAP in conjunction with things like SageMaker or any of the AWS services, keep in mind that you might not be allowed to actually extract the data in a very simple way because of the security concerns, right? So try to think if we can process the data in a runtime and then push it back to SAP, because the store of data in customer's mind is always that it should be in SAP itself. Okay. And there are some more code snippets linked that are there. So any specific question on this whole flow or any other stuffs that you would have come across which you wanted to address before I move to the next slide? Because with SageMaker on top of this app, we are trying to address a business scenario. The next couple of slides, we try to address more of the problem statements which are actually addressing developers or administrators day in day out problem. Yeah, but this one tries to address the business problem. Now, if you ask me, the adoption of such end-to-end use cases is still low, and for the very reason I told, which is about security, right? So still customers are trying to figure out. Why I wanted to bring this here is, when we talk to probably you talk to your customers or any other discussions, all the enterprise customers will have SAP in some form or the other, and they might tell you that no, you do your innovation, so you do your SageMaker or whatever, but I will not let you touch my SAP. Always try to push customer, discuss with customer on what is the reason for that, and use this data extraction reference architectures to bring customer to the confidence, their security team to the confidence of that they, unless you tap this potential, right, you are only going to touch what you call on the surface. You are not going to deep dive on any of the real data sets that you can actually extract value from. Any specific questions before I move to the next one? Yeah. So, the code snippets you mean. So, okay, I think your basic, if I first repeat it, right? How do we convert from ABAP internal tables to CSV files, is it? Okay. See, CSV files are basically the store of the data if you want to store it outside of SAP. Right? SAP internal tables in an ABAP programming language are the runtime storage only. There are two things basically which I would try to segregate this on. If you are actually asked by customer to store in internal tables, you will not really write them to CSV files. The reason being, because as soon as you write them to files, you are actually exposing your data to something outside of SAP which customer don't want. If you just want to write CSV files, there are standard ABAP programs available or ABAP codes available. But the question what I was trying to mention, and the problem that I see with enterprise customers is they don't want us to do that. Instead, what they would want us to do is that you actually take our data of SAP at runtime, process something in SageMaker, and push it back into these internal tables, right? That's where the SDK magic comes into picture. And that's where the data extraction reference I was referring to. So, well, yeah, I mean, CSV is possible, but CSV is not practical, is the way I have seen in last 2-3 years where I have discussed this kind of whole flow with customers. They are really reluctant to do this, except for probably some POC kind of thing, right? Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. No, visualize it from a, okay, I'll go back to the previous slide, right? So, what you see on the left side is what our ABAP framework is, right? The transaction codes way of how we, probably who know SAP, deal with it. The outcome, the visualization will probably remain the same. Or if you probably would have come across Fiori, right? Which is what SAP's new and UI is. That will remain the same. Behind the scenes, what a programmer would do, right? If you and me are programming this, what we would do is, in that transaction code, basically if there were 10 fields saying that this is what the output or the input and the output was, right, on output, now what I would do is I will add 2 more fields, custom fields, which actually get populated by calling this REST API, getting into that AWS service and pulling that data back, right? So for us as an SAP enthusiast, SAP guy, we would still do the same thing, right? But at the same time, how do we leverage or benefit from these additional services, right? And I mean, that's the area that actually is not getting touched because of one very big problem. I mean, even in this room, we are, I think, 3 or 4 people from SAP only. Because most of us as SAP guys, we are not tapping into those AWS services as much, and what most of the AWS experts, the other people in the room, actually don't know SAP that much. Okay, so that's the bridge we are trying to. I mean, I feel that we need to fill in that gap. Yeah, but I mean, for us, it will still remain SAP because SAP wants to keep that hold on this. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, so this is for SageMaker. I think Bedrock, most of you know Bedrock, right? So Bedrock is, in simple words, managed SageMaker. You can actually do most of those modeling things, etc. by default. The only addition, because I don't want to go into any of the Gen AI services because there are a lot of sessions, and I wanted to keep my focus around SAP. So what you can do with Bedrock as well is what you asked. It can actually be an ABAP program that can simply be used to even call a Bedrock based foundational model. And also, very importantly, with Bedrock as well, now these foundation models, as you would have heard, right, they are trained on public data sets, or they are not really actually having the customer information. So that is where you can actually bridge this gap again. You can try to pass some of the customer data at runtime and make this foundation model more sort of a private model for your customer. Right, so that's the addition that is actually again an untapped potential. How do I make this foundation model more of a customer specific private model? Right, so that's something that Bedrock provides, and the ABAP SDK actually has those APIs available to call and send this data and pull the data back. Yeah. Okay, so that's for Bedrock. This is very interesting, right? Because I come from a background where I have been doing SAP administration, some of the SAP developments in the beginning of my career, right? So Code Whisperer, I believe everybody is aware. Have you heard Code Whisperer, what it is? Yeah? Okay. So, Code Whisperer can be used for SAP developers or SAP administrators as well, although it is not directly writing ABAP programs as of yet, but you can actually use it for some of the interesting use cases. One of them I will show as a demo as well as uh, as an administrator, let's say you want to actually copy S3 files onto SAP, right? Or SAP server or vice versa. So how do I do that? I'll show that in the demo, or how I have an SAP system, but how do I stop and start it? So some of these very basic use cases, I mean, you can actually address that probably with a Google search as well, but here you can all do it in a command line interface. You don't need to leave your terminal itself, and you can do the whole stuff. Yeah. So the only important thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the last bullet, if you see here, right? SAP has also brought in their own similar framework, just like similar to Code Whisperer. They have as a low code, no code build SAP build code as a platform. I don't know, since people are not from SAP background, you might not have heard about it. It is an equivalent product of AWS that is actually made available, and it is available from SAP as part of their business technology platform offering on AWS and the other cloud providers as well. So why it is important to know this is because as an SAP guy, you will actually need to always evaluate whether I should use one of these Code Whisperer kind of tools versus one of the SAP tools, right? So both are actually needed. If you ask me as a administrator, as a developer, both are needed. While one brings in the wonders from SAP world, the other one brings in the wonders from the AWS and the other publicly available data sets, right? So both are actually required. We'll see a demo of that. Okay, I think I should move to the next one. Amazon Q, again, I think most of you have heard of Amazon Q, more or less. It's an inline chatbot assistant, and it's equivalent to SAP Joule. As I mentioned, SAP Joule was announced on the similar lines. You see SAP Joule everywhere as a chatbot in all the SAP screens. Same way you see Amazon Q as a chatbot in all of the AWS console, AWS portal screens, right? So, and both of them are customizable to adapt to the customer's data set, customer's requirements. Yeah, where probably. This Amazon Q will become useful is more for developers and administrators, because they are the ones who use AWS portal or AWS console for that matter. And where the Joule would become applicable probably down the line is more for the business users, right? Because they are the ones who actually use SAP screens day in and day out. So they can actually type in a query saying that what are my projections for next month's sales, and that's what I mean. Both Joule and Amazon Q can give an answer to that, but whether Amazon Q is actually able to read the data that SAP Joule is able to do is the main question that would need to be answered. So as a developer, as an administrator, keep it in mind that you will always need to evaluate these two products and see what is customers' appetite to adopt, right? Some might prefer SAP's products, some might prefer AWS products. They basically can do the same job. Yeah. So that's Amazon Q for you. And I think you saw already Party Rock in morning in one of the demos. So Party Rock can basically develop some of these applications. And I'll show you a demo after this. In the same way, Party Rock can also write ABAP code for you. If I want to, let's say that generate a purchase order for me, and how do I do this in an ABAP code? Actually, quite to my surprise as well, it was able to write an ABAP code, which I was surprised at, because I know most of these Gen AI products are actually trained on open source GitHub data, and hence it is not really that much of ABAP friendly, because ABAP is more of a restricted usage and customer specific data, but it was able to write based on some example code. So we will see that as well in the next slide. Yeah, so if you can help me with the videos. We'll go to the Code Whisperer video first. I'll show you how Code Whisperer can help. Okay, while it's loading. So, yeah, Code Whisperer has a terminal-based chat interface, chat kind of interface based on the terminal itself. That's what I have recorded in my demo. So if you see, what I'm trying to do is Code Whisperer AI is the command. With that AI, I get a text prompt, and here I am just telling that I don't know the command, but I want to create a EC2 instance, right? All of us know EC2 instances with so-and-so specification, because I wanted to run this on SAP. I don't want to run I don't want to know the command. It's readily available. I don't need to search it anywhere. All I need to replace is the access key that I have. And to the next extent, we can also use it for the other cloud providers, right? So all I need is Code Whisperer locally on my terminal, and I can tell it I now want to create this on Azure, right? So on Azure, what would be the command? It's also readily available. You can see that the command is actually ready. Now, these are the kind of deployment use cases. Now, I can have some simple requirements, like I want to copy my files from S3 storage bucket to Azure storage account, right? So I am in a cross-cloud environment. So you can see that this is the command AZ copy, and just replace your prefixes. So the thing is, I don't need to know or remember the commands anymore, right? And I don't need to Google it at all. I am in my terminal, and I am going everything. I'm doing. Now, this last one is more of an SAP specific use case, that I want to connect my SAP system to a native S3 bucket. So how do I do that? Now, the answer for this was not so much mature, I would say, because there are multiple ways to connect these. But yeah, at least you get to know how I can copy a file from an SAP server to S3 bucket and vice versa. Yeah, so the last one, if you see, right, AWS S3 CP, I think that's not the cleanest way of doing it, I would say. But still, when I am experimenting it in and day out, I tell my developer teams, my SAP administrators as well, that keep it handy. You use it, not probably a replacement of your Google searches as of today, but for somebody who is 6 months old in my new team member, I am not going to tell him to now go and read any of my existing documentation to start and stop, right? I will just say that you use Code Whisperer AI, type your question, and it will tell you what command you have to use, right? So that's very useful there. Okay. Any questions on this? I think the video is clear. I think we can play the next one. It's only 1 minute left. Yeah, so this one is Party Rock. You saw our keynote in morning as well describing this. But I am showing SAP code that we will create out of the same thing, right? So what I am trying to trying to ask the Party Rock is that I want to create an ABAP code to generate the sales order with customer, product ID, and quantity, right? So I'm telling that these are the inputs I want, and the ABAP code should generate a sales order, right? It can be purchase order, it can be a lot of different things. I have to pass ABAP as the keyword, remember, because then only it will know it has to write an ABAP code. And if you wait for a few seconds, yeah, you see that you already have widgets available, so you have to pass the customer name, the product name, and the quantity. I have just feeded in these three data to the app, and as soon as you do that, you will actually see in this green box that there is an ABAP code snippet created in a matter of seconds. Now, again, if you ask me, is this going to basically help ABAP developer do everything? No, probably not, right? For people who have been doing ABAP developments, the coding is much more complex than this. Okay, there will be a lot of different ifs and buts that might be coming in, but this at least gives a starting point, right? With the whole code that you see along with its description, right? It tells me what is actually happening in that code. So I can very easily understand that this is what was basically needed to start. Yeah, sorry. So my time is up as well, and I am done with this demo. Any questions on any of these two? Thank you. Okay, thanks guys. I hope it was useful, and please reach out to me after this session if needed as well.
Um, Thank you, Sourabh, for this insightful session. It was really nice. Anyone has any questions for Sourabh?